5 weeks of conflict with further escalation firmly on the table. As more U.S. Marines are sent to the Gulf, Iran welcomes the prospect of a ground war. That as the Houthis further threaten Red Sea shipping, while high-level meetings in Pakistan fail to reach a breakthrough. So how much longer will the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran destabilize the world? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. Well, billions across the planet have been on edge for over a month now, with record volatility in energy markets and supply chain disruptions. Though the U.S. president has repeatedly said the war is complete or almost complete, most are bracing themselves for further escalation, which means more shocks to the global economy as well as social discontent. And it's hard to see what incentives are really on the table to make it stop. Iran earns more now from its oil than before the war. Plus, it also sees a chance to beat its greatest enemies on the battlefield. Now, some say the U.S. and Israel have gained negative value from their aggression, meaning they won't be able to stop the conflict until they can declare a win, especially in the Strait of Hormuz. Here's a look.
With increased threats from all sides, but the potential for imminent peace talks, the war on Iran has passed the 1-month mark. On Monday, in a Truth Social post, President Trump said the US is in serious discussions with Tehran to end the conflict. Yet he also ramped up his warnings, saying if a deal is not reached shortly and the Strait of Hormuz not opened, the US will hit Iran's power plants, oil facilities, and possibly desalination plants. After a previous but similar ultimatum from Washington, Tehran had threatened to retaliate by hitting energy and water systems in its Gulf neighbors. On Sunday, Trump also told the Financial Times newspaper that he wants to take Iran's oil and that the US could seize Kharg Island. Located in the Persian Gulf, the small outpost accounts for 90% of Iran's oil exports. The Washington Post also reported that the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations. 3,500 American Marines and sailors arrived in the Middle East on Friday, as the total number of US troops in the region surpassed 50,000. But Tehran warns Washington against any potential US boots on its soil.
The fighters of Islam have long been awaiting such actions in order to demonstrate that aggression and occupation will yield no result other than the humiliating capture, dismemberment, and disappearance of the aggressors, and that American commanders and soldiers will become good prey for the sharks of the Persian Gulf.
Meanwhile, Pakistan hosted foreign ministers from Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia to discuss possible ways to end this conflict. The meeting came days after the US had passed a 15-point plan to Iran via the South Asian nation. Pakistan's foreign minister says the country is ready to host talks between the warring sides to achieve a lasting settlement. In the meantime, a new front has been opened in the fighting. Iran-aligned Houthis in Yemen have launched attacks against Israel with drones and missiles for the first time since the war began. The group holds crucial leverage with its proximity to the Bab al-Mandab Strait, another critical waterway. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively blocked, any Houthi attack on the Red Sea would have devastating consequences for already disrupted global oil supplies. The US-Israeli attacks on Iran continue unabated, while Iran retaliates in the Gulf states and Israel. Despite the push for diplomacy, this cycle has not been broken and in fact is escalating.
Well, joining me now to speak further about the war on Iran are the former deputy to Iran's vice president for strategic affairs and assistant professor of international relations at the University of Tehran, Sasan Karimi. From Washington, former national spokesman for the Republican National Committee and founder of Sheridan Media Group, Kevin Sheridan. And from Paris, geopolitical analyst Joe Macaron. Thank you all so much for being with me. Kevin, I have to start with you in Washington, actually, to discuss President Trump just now saying that the U.S. is in serious discussions with a new and more reasonable regime in Iran. Do you believe him? And are they actually talking to any actual Iranians now?
Well, the truthful answer, we don't know. Donald Trump is a master negotiator. He's done it all his life. Who he's talking to right now, or whether this is bluster, is a total unknown right now. Maybe our Iranian guest knows who the faction could possibly be, but the theory that in Washington is that they've got somebody on the line that, whether it's Marco Rubio or it's Trump directly or someone else, seems to have somebody within the regime that is willing to talk. We just don't know who that is yet.
Okay. I also have to ask you quickly about, in this latest Truth Social post, he warns Iran again that they will go after civil infrastructure, including civilian desalination plants. I just need to know what you think of him kind of preemptively admitting to basically committing war crimes. Is the public okay with that?
No, and I think that's probably a negotiating tactic. I don't actually see us hitting infrastructure because the goal, as we know it, is to have a stable, regime in place, whatever that looks like after this all concludes, and to take it out on the civilian population is probably not in the cards. I don't see that. I think it's probably bluster. It's probably negotiation. We could do it if we wanted to, but I don't see it in the cards.
Okay. Let me ask Sasan if he agrees with that analysis, and also ask Sasan what you make of all of the latest threats here, and does also from Iran's side, are they still welcoming this possible opportunity to fight a ground war on their own territory?
Thanks for having me first. This tactics from Donald Trump, we have in our memory. For example, in the 12 Days War, we had notice of evacuate Tehran, but nothing happened afterwards. So there are, some sort of being vocal from Donald Trump's side, and not that much serious. He did whatever he could have done. For example, he made an attack against a primary school of the small daughters, killed 175, terrored the supreme leader of the country, etc., and targeted 13,000 spots, most of them civilian spots in the country, but nothing happened. Nothing of his manifested goals grasped. For example, the uranium of 460 kilograms, 60% enriched uranium, or the regime change, or the whatever for example, contribution in the election of the next supreme leader. Nothing, or the unconditional surrender. None of the manifested goals have been achieved by Donald Trump. So he has to say somehow his position as a winner, to pretend that he's a winner, but he's not. He has the biggest rally in his own country in history against his actions. His mentality is somehow to count the likes below his posts on Twitter. So with such a mentality, it is very difficult to have 8 million people on the streets in the United States against his politics.
Sasan, let me just quickly repeat, though, the second portion of my question. Several Iranian analysts I have spoken to have said, in almost a daring tone, that they welcome a ground invasion, especially if it comes in the Kharg Island form that Trump has threatened. They've said, I dare you, come to us. This is where you'll see what our military can really do. Do you think that's healthy rhetoric, and do you agree?
I think it is a biggest mistake a United States president can ever make. Because then maybe thousands of murders he will have of soldiers, maybe many hostages he will have of his soldiers. And, with 5,200 to 2,500 people like this, or the soldiers of the United States Army, you cannot occupy Iran. You cannot occupy an island like Kharg, because Iranians are professional enough, and we have 500,000 people only on our ground army, including Artesh and Sepah and the IRGC and the army. So it is not, quite
Okay.
simple. And Donald Trump is the best guy to know it. That's why he always say this. But if he makes this, I think his era is already ended.
Okay, let me turn to Joe then. And Joe, I'll ask you, about the potential for either ending this conflict via talks versus escalation via this ground invasion. And is Trump's threatening to seize Kharg Island and commit those war crimes going to help the U.S., help the energy supply chain, or destabilize it further while actually increasing casualty numbers in this war?
Yes, thank you for having me. I think there's no negotiation by fire now. The two actors mainly, obviously the U.S. and Iran, reached a very critical point last week over energy and Strait of Hormuz, and they had a choice either to escalate or basically look for more rational option. Obviously, we entered a de-escalation phase, even though the tempo is still high in the missiles, but at least from the U.S.-Iran side, and there was opening of some indirect negotiation. There's no now direct talks, to my knowledge, at least between both sides. But from what I heard from mediators is the Egyptians and the Turks and the Pakistanis are sending exchanging messages with different sides inside the Iranian regime, mainly the Revolutionary Guard, the Foreign Ministry, and the head of the parliament, Karibov. And this is why everybody is somehow confused of who's talking and who's not. But it's still in the early stage. I think both sides are doing some grandstanding position now. We saw the 15 points, we saw the Iranian. So somehow the military side is still trying to resolve the impasse of the diplomatic negotiation. And at the same time, while negotiating, Trump is sending troops, is threatening that if you want to keep the Hormuz, I'm going to take over an island. They are sending just 10,000 American troops. This is usually not enough to change the military dynamic. But I think they are sending it as to strengthen his negotiation moving forward. But obviously, both sides are not ready. They reached the point of de-escalation, but not to finish it.
Okay.
And there are still conditions are not clear how to finish it. But like every war, it's going to finish by a ceasefire.
Well, they're not clear how to finish it. I think that's ironically very clear, in spite of what each side might say. Kevin, let me ask you about those talks then. Do you think talks between Saudi, Egypt, Pakistan, and Turkey can produce an end toward peace? And we have to mention we've also heard the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, today asking President Trump to stop the war, saying he is the only one that can do so. Do you think he's in good company then with the partners that are joining him in Pakistan?
I think it's going to take a coalition. It's in everybody's interest in the region and worldwide to get the strait completely open, to get an end to this entire episode, this war. And it's going to take the Gulf states, it's going to take Turkey and Pakistan and everybody else who is willing to participate in a negotiation, because it's not in anybody's interest for this to carry into the summer or carry into, God forbid, a years-long war. Nobody in America wants that. I don't think Donald Trump has any interest in that. I don't think there's even elements in the party that would want that. So getting an end to it, getting the strait open, negotiating those 15 points to some mutual agreement is is in everybody's interest right now.
Let me ask Sasan then if you think Iran should appreciate the efforts being made, particularly in Islamabad. Are the right partners at the table?
No, from Iranian point of view, they are all our very close Muslim friends, Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan, and all almost involved in the security arrangement of this region. So we appreciate it. But at the same time, everybody should recognize that we are here. This is our land. We didn't occupy anywhere. Since 7,000 years ago, we are here. And since 300 years ago, we didn't initiate war against any other country. So this is Iran, and we are attacked a couple of times in the middle of negotiations. So what is the guarantee not to be in the third time? What is the guarantee? Who will pay? Who will compensate this murderers here? Who will compensate this casualties here? Who will pay for the destructions here, for the buildings, for the universities, for even the military bases of our nation? So who will pay for all these costs for Iran out of nowhere because of nothing, because of being in the middle of negotiations 2 times? They repeated it, and there is no guarantee that the third time will not happen in a couple of months after any ceasefire. So Iran is seeking for a guarantee for abandoning the United States and Israel, not to be able to, not just only a guarantee in the international relations or law, but an objective guarantee that abandon them not to be able to attack Iran for the third time. This is our land. We are not fighting for a third-party land together with the United States or Israel. This is our land. They attacked us. They violated the international law. They violated the security arrangements here, and they killed the supreme leader of the country. They killed 175 primary school children here, and an unarmed Navy people in Indian Ocean.
Okay,
so
Sasan,
many crimes that should be condemned. So Iran is looking for a guarantee.
let me just cross back quickly to Washington, because I want to put that to Kevin. I mean, so much trust has been eroded here. And Iran is now saying it will expect compensation, and it will expect guarantees, even though they'll have a lot of trouble trusting those guarantees because agreements signed before have either been thrown out the window or broken mid-negotiation. So what would the U.S. actually cede here as to Iran? Would they give them that compensation? Would they give them the reparations that they're demanding? Go ahead.
So any compensation would be a trade. I think it would take nukes off the table completely. It would, maybe some parts of the missile programs. It would be a trade, and I think it would be done quietly. I don't think there's a domestic interest in the United States to look like we're paying for anything, but that has happened before, and I would think Iran would have to give a lot though for that to happen, and maybe the other states that are involved in the talks will back channel some money in that regard. So yeah, that's the negotiation though.
Okay.
It's going to have to be a trade.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, these negotiations really. It's so hard to see how they could end positively soon because of that complete lack of trust and the lack of trust in any guarantees made, because those guarantees have been broken before. But I also have to mention, should really address the role of the Gulf neighbors here. And it was fascinating to really listen to the UAE Secretary of State actually telling Bret Baier on Fox News a few days ago that Iran is the one to blame entirely for all of this, and that Iran should never have been allowed to control the Strait of Hormuz. But many would argue that only now has Iran taken the control because it was attacked. Prior to that, the Strait of Hormuz was actually working Just fine. So, where does the UAE stand, and where should it stand, as well as its Gulf partners here, particularly Saudi and Bahrain?
I mean, there's no unified Gulf position. Yeah. We have to remember that the Saudi Emirati relation is not doing well since a while now, and facing now a common threat that didn't resolve this problem between them. And this is part of the weakening of the Gulf position in general in this war and leading to it. And the Gulf leaders are a little bit now perplexed what to do. I mean, in one way, they don't want to see Israel fully winning because there's also consequences. And if Iran also stayed the same, also they have to deal with it with the aftermath. So we see now the Saudi position has shifted in recent days. It joined the mediation effort. Before it was a little bit watching what will happen. Now they did the shift. The UAE already went far in the normalization with Israel. They have a very close cooperation, and this will not maybe in the short term at least. We have to see after the war because everybody would change their calculation after the war, and especially how it ends. But the UAE or Bahrain are very small. They have wealth and some power in some aspect, but they can't little change the dynamic alone now. So I think it remains on what's happening between the US and Iran as a big picture. And the are like a collateral damage now to this war, and they are waiting to see how it will end and what impact it will have on them. But
Yeah.
they have little impact on the outcome.
Okay, Sasan, I'll come back to you because there are other elements we've yet to really explore, and there are, of course, threats now from the Houthis. And I'll ask you, how much worse could the Houthi contingent make all of this if it stops more commerce, traffic in the Red Sea, and we could say at this point is the Strait of Hormuz now almost exactly like the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, in that we're seeing a huge military power have trouble combating the power of relatively inexpensive drones being able to destabilize so much.
No, Iran doesn't have any control on Houthis or Hezbollah. They are independent groups and sovereignties. So they make their own decision and just perform it upon their own interests and beliefs. But formerly we had a background that United States even couldn't overcome the Houthis and could just let them let them control to have the control of Bab al-Mandab. So I think they will stop crossing Bab al-Mandab because the boats from Bab al-Mandab, they will close it or they will control it. It is very natural. It is very nonsense that Iran or any other country pay any cost for its rights. It is not legal, not logical that a country attack you and or a couple of countries, nuclear countries, attack you, and then you negotiate with them and give them a part of the thing that they don't have any right in. It is not logical.
Yes,
not
you said. Indeed. You know what? We just have 2 minutes left. So
100 billion euros up until now that should be paid by the United States now.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will not be open, the Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab.
Understood. Compensation, reparations are being demanded by Iran. We've heard the logic there. But Kevin, I just need to ask you on that final point, though, that I brought up with the Houthi contingent now threatening further action. Where is that going to leave the United States? Americans have had to see costs increase when they were promised the opposite would happen. And now if the Houthis go after the Red Sea again and more shipping is interrupted, cheaper goods from elsewhere are not allowed into the U.S., what's supposed to happen to the American public in that case?
Well, so far the American public they're fairly against the war mostly, but not completely. His base is still with him because they trust him As far as the Houthis go, I think you'll see a massive bombing campaign, and who knows where that will end. But the idea that America is the one committing war crimes here, I think we have to be honest about what's going on. And you can make a case that America's committing war. Iran has attacked all of its neighbors. It has bombed civilian targets willingly and intentionally. That's a fact. It's hitting oil tankers in the Gulf, so in the Straits. It is absolutely committing war crimes.
It said that
So
would
you
happen,
could say
though.
that's going on both sides.
People argue
but
whether that's war crime. They say it's U.S. installations and mostly military bases, but they warned exactly that would be
Okay.
done. So how can the U.S.
hotels in Abu Dhabi, Doha, it's all over the region. I mean, it's both sides. So if you want to make that case, which I'm not even trying to make right now, you have to be honest about what's actually going on.
Okay, Kevin, unfortunately, that's going to have to be the final word. So regrettably, we are completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. So I'd like to thank all three of my panelists sincerely so much for being with us, and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We will see you next time.